Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. So, today I'm really excited. I have an amazing guest on with me today. She's also a relationship coach. So, today I have Lucy Price with me, and we got connected on Facebook through a mutual group that we're in. Um, and we kind of got talking about this podcast and what I'm doing and how it really, like what she does and what I do, really complement each other well. So, we decided to do an episode together. So, I am actually going to let her introduce herself because I love Lucy. I love what you do. I love the way that you work with people, the kind of the aspect of relationships that you work with. So, welcome to the episode. Thank you for being with me today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So, I'm a relationship coach. I help people to have incredible relationships with themselves and with others. Most of my clients who come to me, they come to me after they've gone through a breakup, a divorce, a toxic relationship. They've been struggling with relationship anxiety. Sometimes they're going into their second marriage, or they're going into their next relationship, and they just feel like they're stumbling. They feel like they're lost. They feel like it's really hard and heavy to create and keep beautiful relationships. And so that is what I help people do. I help people to figure out what is blocking them from having the relationship that they want, creating a process to overcome that, and then how to maintain that relationship once they have it.
I love that. And that's what so when I was saying I love what you do, because so much of what I see even on the therapy side of working with people is just hurts that have not been healed all the way, and we don't always recognize how deep our pain is or how deep our hurts or scars are from past relationships. And every person who's been through a relationship, whether it's a successful one or an unsuccessful one, it impacts you, it changes you, and it really just you there's my dog. You learn a lot about yourself, but not everyone stops and takes kind of inventory of what those things are that we've learned about or that have changed in ourselves. And so your work, I'm so excited to learn more about it because you're helping people slow it down, really understand what they've experienced, how it's impacted them, and then how to be healthy in future relationships. So kind of walk us through the different kinds of kind of well, let's start with what's your specific passion? How did you get into this? What got you into this work?
Oh goodness. So for me, it was a series of relationships that have went wrong.
Yep.
I think that's the origin story for a lot of coaches, a lot of therapists, a lot of people who come into the I want to say like self-help profession or the mental health profession.
Yeah.
It was a story of getting mixed up in situationships that weren't serving me. So I can date this back to childhood, like most of us can when it comes
Hmm.
to our path, when it comes to things that we've struggled with. But I grew up in a home where there was a lot of chaos within the home. There was a lot of communication barriers within the home in terms of not being able to really communicate, not being able to discuss feelings. I'm English. I don't sound it, but
Hmm.
England
Yeah.
is notorious for not talking about their
Hmm.
feelings. And I grew up in a home that did not necessarily model to me the relationships that I wanted to have as an adult. And during that time, I really formulated intense relationship anxiety. I remember the first time I got asked out on a proper date at like 16 years old. I had panic attacks for 5 days, and then I ended up canceling the date.
Oh,
And then he ended up
yeah.
dating my best friend because,
Interesting.
16-year-olds.
Yeah.
And I that was my first introduction to relationship anxiety, and I didn't have a term for it at the time. I didn't know what was going on. It just felt wrong. It felt scary. I just had all of these images come in my brain of things that were going to go wrong, of getting trapped in a relationship, of being stuck with somebody, and it just created a lot of anxiety in my body. And so from a pretty young age, I've been managing, getting interested in how to work with my relationship anxiety, how to move past it. So that I think that was the seed. But as the years went on, I did the traditional after college route. I got a corporate job. I worked in marketing. I was
Mhm.
completely unfulfilled. I was having intense anxiety. I was not sleeping. And I decided to leave everything and go to a yoga teacher training for a month in the mountains, like you
Wow.
do.
Yeah.
And when I was there, I just had a lot of healing come up. I started to interface with my emotions in a different way. I was around a community of people who just exuded compassion and love. And I started to actually move through some of the things that I struggled with.
Yeah.
That path led me down to health coaching, which when the pandemic hit, I then pivoted to an online business and started general life coaching and then niched down into relationships because
Love that.
I realized that working with coaches and working with therapists around my own relationships made such an impact in my quality of life and also such an impact in the opportunities that came my way outside of even what you would expect that I knew that there was something here for me. I knew there was a way for me to help people on this journey because I had both intensely gone through it and I had also studied it in various ways. So that's what led me to the coaching that I'm currently doing today. But the behind the scenes stories is a lot of messy relationships, a lot of things that didn't work out, and a lot of learning and
Yeah.
growing in the process.
Which is the best way to become an expert at something, like you
Yes.
live it, you know the ins and outs. And I imagine for you, because you're good at what you do, you know that it's not a one size fits all, but you have the kind of the experience to know how to guide people through understanding their specific story. Like, how did it play out in their life? What did they struggle with? What's their backstory from even from childhood? And I think a lot of people don't recognize how our backstory affects who we are today. And I even, talk about it not just in the sense of the relationship itself, but in parenting, right? So the way we parent so much of the time is impacted very directly by how we were parented and those early experiences. And we don't always realize that we're carrying things with us from the past. And so for you, like, as you start to work with someone, like, what are some of the things that you really try to help people learn about themselves and just notice about their story?
Absolutely. So I think when it comes to helping them realize something about themselves and their own story and what's coming up for them, it is in general being able to build that awareness in and of itself. Because
Mhm.
I think that when it comes to our romantic relationships, when it comes to parenting, as I see this a lot in parenting, like most things aren't responses, they're reactions. You have a
Yeah.
reaction to something, you have a trigger, you're not necessarily even having a conscious thought about it, but it's just a reaction, it's a turn. And so I think when it comes to people becoming aware of what their own patterns are, their own reactions to things are, it's actually just in and of itself building the awareness because it's so fast when it happens.
Yep.
So a process that I work my clients through is having the awareness, being able to build the awareness, and we do that through a few different tools. We do that by looking at past experiences and looking at conflict in the recent months, heartbreaks in the recent month, like whatever it feels poignant.
Yep.
And we get into it and we think like, okay, in that moment, take yourself back. What thoughts were coming up for you? What feelings were alive in your body? What was the circumstances? What was going on? Just to practice the muscle of building awareness. Then
Mm.
we move into presence, which is really being present with it. Okay, what were you trying to get? What were you trying to keep yourself safe from? What were your needs in that moment? And starting to kind of get underneath the undercurrent of what stories might have been playing out for them to react to respond in that way. And then we
Mhm.
move into alternative actions, alternative thoughts. So, what could you have thought differently? How could you have reacted differently? What is a different way you could have gone about this? And so, when it comes to like building the own awareness of what's going on for them, it sounds so silly and cliche and simple, but really it is building the awareness, like actually building the awareness in the first place. Because if you
Yep.
don't have awareness of something, it's really incredibly hard to change it.
Absolutely. And honestly, I think that it's such a powerful thing. It's a when you build awareness for yourself, it gives you this sense of control that you never had
Mhm.
before. Because I think we, as just it's human nature, like, we know what's not working for us and we know what we're upset about, what we're sad about, and what we want to change, but we don't necessarily see the power and just kind of the control that we could have in our own lives. And when you work with someone to show that, just to help them see themselves in a different way, it's cool because you incorporate a lot of, sounds like you naturally incorporate a lot of like cognitive behavioral therapy almost,
Mhm.
and so it's that idea of being able to really look at like, what is it that you're thinking and how do you view yourself, and then how does that affect how you behave and how you feel. And if we can get more clarity on why we make these decisions and where this is coming from, then that just gives us the power to change and to make different choices. And by making different choices, that the whole thing will play out differently. The way that you feel about yourself, and in a lot of ways the way you feel about the person you're inviting into your life, like you can interact with that person and in that relationship so differently just by understanding why you're doing what you're doing
Mhm.
and learning how to do it differently.
As well as the power of choice, right? I love that you
Mhm.
touched on that because I think that what people forget sometimes is that we always have a choice, even if it
Mhm.
doesn't feel like it. One of the most insightful pieces of advice that I was ever given was if you're doing something, it is because you're choosing to do it. And
Mhm.
when you're stuck a in a mindset where nothing's changing and nothing I do makes a difference and I can't do anything about it, or it has to be this way because it has to be this way. When you're
Mhm.
stuck in that mental place, it can be really easy to forget that you do have a choice. But you always have a choice. If
Mhm.
you pick up the kids from school, you chose to go and pick up the kids. If
Yeah.
you are making dinner, it's because you chose to make dinner. If you're going to a 9 to 5 job that you hate, it's because you're choosing to go for whatever reason you're choosing to go. And it might be just like a 51% choice where you're just kind
Right.
of choosing it a little
Yeah.
bit more over the
Yeah.
alternative, but
Yep.
it's still a choice and it's still something you're choosing. And I got this piece of advice when I was considering leaving my corporate job. And I was in that mindset myself. I was like, there's nothing I can do. I need to make money. I need to, this is what everyone says. This is where what I need to do to get to where I want to go. And I didn't choose this for myself. And someone, thank goodness, stopped me and said, no, you are choosing it. Like you are doing
Mhm.
this. You could not go to work tomorrow. Like that's
Yep.
totally something you could choose to do.
Mhm.
And I think just recognizing in our relationships that we really do have so much power and we really do get to choose what we do with ourselves and how we think and how we move through the world. So much can come from that. So much creation, so much forward momentum can come from that. And so I think it's really important to never lose sight of that because, frankly, we live in a world where sometimes it's so easy to
Yeah.
lose sight of the power we have.
Yeah. And I mean, even as you're saying that, I'm thinking of how that applies to the nuances of a relationship. Like, I hear couples say like we just don't have time to do anything together as a couple, or I don't have time to spend one-on-one time with all my kids. And it really, like, yeah, people are absolutely busy and it is hard to really balance out all the things that come with life. But within all of that, there are choices. We do get to choose how we spend our time. What do we prioritize? Do we spend our time scrolling on our phones, or do we get on the floor and play with our kids?
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be well, we don't have time to go on a date. Okay, great. Do you have time for a 10-second hug? Because that
Mhm.
is a whole lot better than a 1-second hug. Like, what can you make time for? How do you balance your priorities and the choice that goes with that? And I think that you've seen that play out because I imagine in the work that you do a lot of reflection on the relationships that they've come from. So you
Mhm.
think back and you help clients think back to, what do you wish it was different? Like, how do you wish it was different? What do you wish you would have done differently? Or what can you look for in a new partner that would really kind of meet your core values? And I think that while you're in a relationship, a lot of that is the same thing. You're in that place, you're not happy in your relationship, or maybe something is missing. How do you stop and really reflect on your behavior and the dynamics of your relationship? What are the changes that you can do right now? There might be itty bitty, like, go, I don't know, whether it's a self-care choice or a communication choice or whatever. It's something you can do to make an impact and a change right now. So
Yeah.
it all kind of comes together. I don't know.
Yeah, and I heard this saying once. I didn't come up with this, but I don't know who to give the credit to. it was this phrasing that resonated with me so deeply that goes, your priorities are what you prioritize.
Mhm.
And I think as people, this might come out as a little bit of tough love, but I mean it with all the love. I think as people, we think that our partners or our children are our main priority, but then we're on Netflix for 3 hours and on our phone
Mhm.
scrolling.
Yep.
And that's where it gets really nuanced,
Yeah.
right? Because most of the time people are doing that to distract, to numb, to dissociate, because they're stressed, because they're tired, because they are addicted to the phone, because they want the quick blips of dopamine and all of those hormones. Like, we can come up with 1,000 reasons why that's the case, but at the end of the day, what's happening is that we are prioritizing what we're choosing to prioritize. And I think that when we're entering into new relationships, being very aware of, what do we actually value? What do we actually want to prioritize? And then really getting clear for ourselves on how we can do that is so important, because
Mhm.
there are ways to limit screen time. There are ways to create space for date nights. There are ways to drop into those 10-second hugs. But if your brain is in a different set of priorities, then it's going to be harder for you to reach for those things, because you have a thought that you don't
Mhm.
have time.
Yep.
Because if you had time, then you might do it. But realistically, I think that we prioritize things without conscious effort. It's habit, it's
Yep.
what feels good in the moment, and it's not with as much intention that we could bring to it. And I
Yes.
think that when it comes to our relationships, we all want to feel like a priority to our partner. We all want to feel like a
Mhm.
priority to somebody else. And part of that comes from making them also a priority for you and getting really clear on what your values and your intentions actually are.
Yeah, one of my favorite words is intention. I love it
Mhm.
because I feel like it really can be the driving force, like towards every kind of good. Like if you intentionally invest in yourself and your family and your whatever, like that's how change happens. That's how you live a life of fulfillment, is you're doing something because you want to do it, or you recognize the value of it, so you pour into that. And I think, the tough love thing, I love that because um we all need it. Like, I know I
Yeah.
need it. I've had to give myself tough love. I've had to seek out tough love. I mean, my husband and I are very honest and supportive, but sometimes it's like, it's okay to be wrong. Like, it's okay on
Yes.
this one that you don't like, let me help you, or let me like show you a different way of looking at this, because the way you're looking at it is a little, maybe for me personally, I tend to look at things on an emotional level because I'm very sensitive. I've learned to look at things more objectively and rationally, but it's taken effort. So I've had to have a lot of that tough love with even myself, and talking with clients, whether from a coaching or a therapeutic standpoint. Change only happens if it's difficult. Like, I mean, it just shouldn't be
Mhm.
that hard, but it should be hard. Like, you have to overcome something to get to the other side of it for it to be better. um
Mhm.
and so I like tough love. I think if you're not challenging yourself to grow, that is a problem,
Mhm.
you know
I
what
like what you said too, of it's okay to be wrong sometimes. I think one of the most beneficial things for my relationship with my partner is that we are able to be wrong. We are able to not make it mean anything that we were wrong.
Mhm.
One of my favorite phases are, what are you making it mean? What is the story you're telling yourself about what this person said, or what the situation was, or whatever? And I think when it comes to being wrong in something, people have a big response to, well, if I'm wrong, that means I'm a horrible person, or I'm always wrong, or people don't trust me, or I'm an idiot. And we come up with
Yeah.
all of this emotional drama around
Yeah.
it, baggage around it.
Mhm.
And really, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to not have that be a big deal in your relationship. And I think when I look at couples, when I look at some of the rupture that happens around couples, I think that being wrong is one of the big ones, because we either want to like dig it into our partners for whatever reason, or we feel like we can't take it. So if, like, honestly, I think one of a key piece of advice I can give around relationships is around making it mean something if you were wrong or your partner was wrong.
Yeah.
It's funny because
Mhm.
I had never actually said that before, but
Yeah.
as I'm thinking about it,
Yeah.
I'm realizing how impactful that actually is, to
Yeah.
just It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to have there be a better way of engaging with each other, the kids, the house. It's okay to have a different perspective.
Yeah. And creating an environment that supports that, right? Like for you to be
Mhm.
comfortable being wrong, you have to feel sense of security and safety with your partner to
Yes.
know that that person isn't going to rub your face in it and be like, see,
Yes.
I told you so kind of thing, but more of a like, hey, thanks for being honest. Thanks for admitting that you were wrong, because it's all it the goal shouldn't be to further sell your own agenda. It should be to nurture the relationship, right? If
Mhm.
I don't want to admit I'm wrong, because there could be pride there, but there also could be self-worth there, right? So a lot of people don't want to admit that they're wrong because that might mean something about who they are as a person. And maybe we can transition that into some of your work in the you had mentioned to me that you work with people also who are in a second marriage, for
Yes.
example, and they've learned so much, or maybe they want to learn because they're in the second relationship. They're finding that some of the same issues maybe that they'd have experienced in a previous relationship is popping up again. And so in my mind, I was thinking, self-worth is one of those things that I see a lot in people who are, they're in a second marriage, they're struggling with something, and then they're like, maybe it's me, like, what am I doing wrong? Or what's wrong with the people I'm picking? But sometimes it's not even about that. It's just, it's behavioral. It's the mix of this, I don't know, mix of these two people, but that's your world. So tell me kind
Yes.
of what that looks like.
Yeah, it's interesting because when people ask me the question of how come it's so challenging for me to have these relationships, like, is it me? Is it the people I'm dating? Is it, what
Mhm.
is it? I, there's a few different things that I think about. I think that, again, one of the truths is you're the common denominator of these relationships. And that means there's probably something on your side of the street to clean up. We don't have to make that mean you're failing. We don't have to make that mean anything. It just means, like, if we're just even thinking about this as logically as possible, there's something that's happening. There's either something that you're attracted to that is coming from a wound. There's a behavioral pattern that's being played out. There's a reaction. There's something that's coming up. So whenever people are asking themselves the question of, okay, every relationship just seems like the same guy with a different face, what's going on? I like to look at, okay, what are the breadcrumbs? What are the clues? What are you consistently attracted to in these people? What is the draw? What is the conversations? What's going on? Let's look at it. Let's bring it to the surface. Let's figure out where the clues are coming from. Because, well, everybody's relationship and everyone is different. I think that there's a couple of clues that tend to be the same, which is either like how you're communicating, boundary setting, like practical relationship tools, like how are you applying those? And then there's the relationship with self. So, like your own self worth, what you think you deserve, what you think is even normal in relationships. Because a lot of people come from backgrounds or have engaged in relationships where yelling is normal, hitting things is normal, throwing things is normal. And that's just the standard, and you don't expect anything different. And so if you don't want to have that relationship, though, we have to we have to rework some mindset and belief things. So I think that first things first is just you have to look at the clues, and you do have to look at what is yours. So what I think of as yours, or your side of the street, is what are your thoughts, what are your actions, what are your beliefs, what are your habits, how are you communicating, how are you acting, just like how are you showing up.
Mm.
I think then we can start to get into those more and actually solve for those more. Because if it comes down to, like, no, the people are great, but whenever there's a conflict, I run for the hills, then cool,
Yeah.
there's something around conflict that's activating for you, and we can hone in on that more. But it might be an attraction thing for people. It's like, I'm always attracted to the bad guy, and it's like, okay, why is that attraction there? And we have to go a little bit deeper into the belief work.
Yeah, yeah. And I love it because I think, I'm just thinking of how the kind of the presenting problem, so to speak, like when a couple comes to counseling or comes to coaching, it's we need help with this. Maybe it's communication or conflict resolution. And that is absolutely manifesting itself. Like you're struggling with those things in your relationship for sure. But so much of the work that's done to really resolve that is individually, what do you need to work on to communicate better? So I can teach
Mhm.
you all these communication skills and conflict resolution skills and respect and all of parenting or whatever. But at the end of the day, you have to implement it personally to yourself. And I think couples are very, in human nature, I think we tend to point the finger, well, he did this and she did this. And when I tried this, you always shut it down or whatever. And some of that is obviously going to be true, but I think I it's back to your self-awareness note, we have to do that work within ourselves. We have to understand, when do we fly off the handle? What triggers us? What is it that the other person might say that might cause us to react a certain way? And you were talking about reacting as well. Like, we have to be responsible for ourselves, our part in the relationship. And when we feel strong and good about who we are, then you can look at the other person and be like, all right, I need you to work on this. Like, yeah, you can notice the other person's stuff. It's hard to oversee that, but the
Mhm.
focus shouldn't be the other person. It should be on what I can do to be better, what I can do to nurture this relationship, what I can do to support my spouse or my partner. It's all about being aware and intentional within
Mhm.
yourself.
Yeah, I also really appreciated that you brought in really applying what you're learning and really integrating it into your relationship, into your day-to-day life. Because I've had a lot of people come up to me and go, I've read all the self-development books, I've watched the YouTube videos, I've done all of this, and I still feel like it's not working. Feel like my relationships aren't changing. And I think that's because there's a difference between in taking information and actually applying information. There's a
Yeah,
difference between
100%.
personal development and shelf
Mhm.
development. And one of I heard the best analogy, which was reading a book and expecting it to change your life is like watching a YouTube workout video and expecting it to change your body. And
Love
it's just
it.
like I love that so much because I think we all have had an experience of reading or watching something and being like,
Yeah.
wow, I'm learning so much. I'm so like
Yes.
enlightened about
Save
this
it,
now.
share it, all the
Save it,
things.
share
Yeah.
it. Yes, like cheer it. And it's just like, yeah, but I'm actually not applying that to my life.
Mhm.
And I think that's where frankly having an outside force, like I think about the couples that come and work with me or work with you, and having that outside eye to hold both parties accountable, I think is so
Mhm.
powerful too.
Yep.
Because I think that when you're in a relationship, I will always advocate for people controlling what they can control and cleaning up their side of the street, because then if nothing else, you know you did everything in your
Yeah.
power to
Yep.
show up in integrity for the relationship to
Mhm.
succeed and flourish. So I always encourage that. And also, if you feel like as a couple, you want to work on it, you want to stay together, both parties are saying that they're doing the work and you're still struggling, get an outside eye, get someone who you
Yeah.
trust, someone who is
Mhm.
educated, someone who is neutral, someone who does not have a personal investment in the relationship to support you. Because having someone else to look in and be like, okay, but are you doing this and are you doing this and how is this actually working? I find it to be so valuable when it comes to
Yeah.
actually succeeding in this work.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I think, it'd be great if we could solve all our own problems, but
Mhm.
really, if you stop and think about every aspect of your life, at some point we are seeking support, whether it's ordering food from somewhere else because we don't want to cook or don't have time to
Mhm.
cook, or going to a gym, going to, I don't know, a financial, a CPA. Like, we're constantly bringing in professionals or someone with some expertise to help us do the things that maybe don't come supernatural to us. So I
Mhm.
don't know how to change the oil on my car, so I go get someone to do it for me.
Mhm.
I don't know how to build this beautiful built-in shelf in my office, so I hired someone to do it. So, but what is it about our relationships that we just kind of put on a different level where we're like, well, we'll figure it out. We
I
don't
think
want
it's
to pay for
because
someone.
Yeah, I think it's because we attach it so much to our worth. I think well, actually, I think there's a variety of things here in the room. I think first we have the history of mental health in general, which is
Mhm.
mental health has become something that is so stigmatized. It's something that, oh, you're weak if you get help, you're weak if you talk to
Yeah.
someone, don't cry, toughen up, push through it, grow thickest. Like we have all of this I think it really holds us back. I would call it really negative connotation with getting support. So I think we have
Mhm,
that living in the backdrop. I
mhm,
think we are progressing from that. We are
yeah,
moving forward from that. I mean, I remember talking to my grandfather who grew up just post World War II, and his evolution of, oh, we don't talk to anybody about our problems, to
yeah.
now being like, oh yeah, I've talked to a counselor about that.
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh.
there's a bunch of
Yeah,
growth that is
yeah,
happening. And also, I think that's still present for some people. I
yeah,
think there's also the fact that relationships are really tied to our self-worth. They're really tied to our how we view ourselves, our identity, and that perception from other people. I
yeah.
think we're afraid of other people's perception of us.
Yep.
What will they think if we're going to see a marriage counselor? What does our neighbor Barbara down the street think of us needing support?
Mhm,
And I think we just get all of this like mental confusion, drama around it because
mhm,
of what other people think or how we think about ourselves and what we connotate getting support from, like with.
uh,
But in the same way that you said, with the cabinets, with everything else, it's like, sure, you can try and muscle through. You can watch, if I have a broken sink, I can watch hours of YouTube videos on how to fix a broken sink on and go out to Home Depot and buy, $200 worth of equipment and whatever else.
yeah.
Or I could pick up the phone, call the plumber, get it done in
Right.
an hour and spend
Yeah,
$100. It's like, I
yeah,
think sometimes people too think it's the quickest or cheapest option to do it yourself, to
yeah,
read all the books, to watch the seminars, to watch the
yeah.
TED Talks, when it's not.
Mm-mm.
Like there's
No,
no other
right.
way I can say that where it's like,
Yeah,
or you could just talk to someone you could work with someone for a month, 3 months, one time, whatever,
yeah,
and have them hone in on you, your specific issues, the things that you're struggling with, and the things that you're good at too, and help you capitalize and work on those things. I
yeah,
just think there's a lot of mental bias. I think there's a lot of self-negative talk about getting support for your own growth or your own mindset, emotions. But I do also have hope. I also think we are starting to come out of this.
mhm,
And I think one of the ways I see this is how many people, frankly, CEOs, people in management who are openly sharing, I work with a life coach. I worked with
mhm.
like, I
Yeah,
think having more of those voices come
yep,
into the room has helped.
yeah,
And this is my hope for whoever's listening. Don't be afraid to share that you've done it too, because you never know who might have their relationship, their marriage saved because you
yeah,
were brave enough to share how it helped you. You don't know who might be really struggling with their own self-worth, and they might hear that you also did that, you got help for it, and they might start on that journey. So I think that's part of it too. Like I was so nervous to share when I first started working with a relationship coach that I was. And now I'm so grateful and I've started doing this work myself. So that's kind of what I see, but I'm curious what you see as well around
yeah.
that.
I agree. I think all of it, all of what you said is so true. And I've see that play out all the time. And then, for me, especially as I've launched this coaching business, I think there's a lot of whenever you're talking about a relationship or your marriage, it's one of the most vulnerable things. It's so difficult because, like, I really agree with what you said about what do other people think. And I think that is one of the, you before we hit record, you and I were talking about technology and social media and the good parts and the bad parts. And one of the bad parts is its impact on self-worth and relationships because I think so many people scroll through and see you know, a snapshot of a moment of a day of a life. Like it's that snapshot that looks so beautiful and so perfect, and everyone's happy and everyone looks great. And then someone else will see that and be like, I don't have that life. I don't have that marriage. My kids aren't well behaved like that. But that's not real for anyone. Everyone struggles. Everyone has hardship. Yeah, some people's relationships maybe have less struggle or less hardship, but ultimately we all like no one's got it together all the time. But when like it's so difficult from a couple's perspective, from someone looking at their relationship that's not great and being consuming content of happy, happy, happy on the internet,
Mhm.
then it becomes a really vulnerable thing to say, I'm not okay and I need help, or we're not okay and we need help. It almost is this like, there's some shame that
Yes.
can come in with that. And the fear of judgment, the fear of, it got really dark in here, the fear of judgment. And it plays such a loud role. And so to your point about, if you're that CEO or that person that has influence and you admit that you do seek support, that is
Mhm.
one of the most amazing things that you can do to the people who look up to you, because
Yeah.
that's what makes other people feel normal, makes them feel they're not alone, and that it's okay, it's appropriate, and it's acceptable to struggle and to need help for that struggle. So I'm
Yeah.
with you 100%. I see the same thing.
Yeah, and something that I just want to pose as a thought question to anyone who is like maybe trying to decide whether to get sport or not, or have these feelings of embarrassment come up or feelings of shame come up. Just know that you're not alone. Tons of people have felt this way, tons of people have struggled with that. And then also to ask yourself the question of, is it worth the trade-off? Is investing this amount of time and this amount of money to getting support worth what could happen if you don't get the support, or the time you spend arguing, or the time you spent in conflict, or feeling bad, or feeling down, or feeling anxious? Like, what trade-off are you making here? Because I think people think to themselves sometimes, and let me be clear, like, this is not me saying everyone needs to go out and hire somebody to help them,
Right. 100%.
but in saying that, I think sometimes the thing that comes up is, oh, I don't need to talk to somebody. I don't need to spend 100, 200, whatever for a session with somebody. I can just do it myself. But what time, energy, money investment are you making without realizing it? Like, how much time are you spending without realizing it, when you could just make the initial like time, energy, financial investment to working with somebody? And for some people, it's worth it to go solo. I've had chapters of my life where I've gone solo and it's brought me a lot of insight. But at certain points, it's just time to call in support, and that's okay too. And just really be honest with yourself of, okay, what trade-offs are you making either way in this
Mhm.
decision?
Yeah, and I think it's also going back to that value, core, but like what is important to you, and how much does this matter? If you get it
Mhm.
taken care of now, what kind of difference will that make in your life? Like for me, when I decided that I wanted to kind of broaden my career into coaching, because I still run a practice, I still do therapy, but I really was curious about this coaching thing. I knew that I could probably do it by myself. I started this practice by myself. I had, done a bunch of stuff without, just learning it on my own. But it got to the point where I was just like, I know myself. I know if I do it by myself, it will take me a really long time. I'm going to get frustrated. I'm not going to be disciplined enough. And I'm going to be then frustrated and annoyed with myself because it's taking me so long. And that excitement that was building up was going to be so, um, it was gonna take me so long to make it a reality that I just didn't want that, and I had thankfully, the, financial ability to invest in a coach, for myself.
Mhm.
And that has made me kind of go from where I was in the thinking stage to now launching in just a couple of months. Whereas
Yeah.
if I'd done it by myself, I mean, we would have been doing this for years,
Yeah.
because I don't naturally build that time in. Like, and I think couples, we don't block off time to work on our relationship. There's no time for that. We have to
Yeah.
make time for that. And I think if anything, going to therapy, or even if you do read the book, but
Mhm.
make a plan to implement the book.
Yes.
It's setting that time, even if you say, you know what, we're giving ourselves 15 minutes at the end of every night to just catch up on the day, or just sit and talk about, some our kids, whatever. That is special time that you make intentionally, and people can do it. They don't need us, they don't need
Mhm.
support. But for those that don't have success in doing that on their own, that's why we're here, because we know what it's like to need that and not have
Mhm.
it. And we know what it's like to have it and really benefit from having it.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for people like you. I'm thankful that there are lots of options. And you know what? We all have a different thing to offer. We might offer something similar in the sense of our goal, but the way
Mhm.
we do it is so different and people
Mhm.
are so different. So it's good to have a bunch of us that do this.
Yeah, and I think to try and mentally for yourself not think about it as a bad thing that you need this kind of help, because like you said earlier, we take our cars to mechanics, we go to doctors for our physical health, we go to the grocery store for food. Like, we're already exchanging with people. Like, I don't have, well, that's not true, I have a tiny herb patch in my garden, but like, I'm not growing
Yeah.
all of my own food. I'm okay investing in that because
Yeah.
that's something I want and something I need. And to not think about, and this doesn't have to be like therapy or coaching specifically, but anything that benefits your mental health or personal growth.
Massage, whatever.
Massage,
Yeah.
yoga class, like it could
Yeah.
be anything. I think sometimes when when we have an experience rather than a physical product, we have more emotions come up around the particular financial investment of something.
Mm.
But I mean, I spent a $30 on a lipstick 2 days ago. You
Yeah.
know, it's like I could, and it's for sometimes I notice even within myself, I have like emotions come up around a $30
Yeah.
meditation class. And it's
Yes.
like just
Yeah.
also noticing those things for
For
yourself,
sure.
because
Hmm.
there's been a lot of times where I've talked myself out of doing something that would be good for my mental emotional health
Yeah.
because I just look at the investment differently for what it is. So just being aware of that too.
I
But
love that. That's yeah. I 100% because
you
I
know,
consider myself to be a stingy person, but
I
it's so
in some ways I
selective.
do too, but it's
Yeah.
selective, and that's
Yeah.
it, right? Like it's a
Mhm.
selective stinginess, and we all have it. Like we all
Yes.
have our things that we're
Yeah.
stingy about, but and just being aware of, like, is it really that you don't have time and energy, or is that you are seeing this differently than the other things that you do actually have time and energy
Mhm.
and money for?
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say on
No, yeah. You may not want to
that.
give up something that you like doing for
Yeah,
something that you need to do.
need to do.
Kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yes,
This has been
absolutely.
so much fun. Thank you so much for doing this with me. So before we wrap up, I want, I mean, what you have to offer, what you do is just gold. So tell us a little bit where, and I'm going to put all of this information in the show notes so people can find you later, but tell us a little bit about what working with you would look like, where they can find you, what your program consists of.
Absolutely. So you can find me on my website, www.shiftyourstory.net, on my socials at lucy.m.price. That's Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I'm there. And what working with me looks like is, again, most of the people who come to me are people who have struggled with relationships in some way. Maybe that's you're finding it hard to let go of an ex, you're noticing different triggers and activations come up, and you want to move past those. You don't want them to be so present anymore, maybe relationship anxiety, but whatever it is, people come to me for that. I have a few different ways that people can enter into this particular work. One of my favorite ways to work with people is one on one. I really love that container. And so my one on one packages are 3 months long. It includes calls, Voxer support, all of that juicy good stuff. But then I also do have programs too. So if you are more of a self study person, you can still come my way. I have some self study programs. And what I love about those is you can still ask me questions. So as you're going through the modules, you can still email me your questions and I will reply with answers. So you're welcome to look at those as well.
Love that. And I will get all of those links from you and put them in the show notes. Lucy, thank you. This was so fun for me. I really enjoyed talking to you and getting to know you. And I have a feeling we're going to be talking again because you and I are
Yes,
probably going to have to do another episode at some point.
absolutely.
All right, girl. Thank you. I'll see you
Thank
later.
you. Bye.
Bye.